Hey, welcome to Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I'm not the perfect dad, but every day, just like you, I am trying to be better. If you know anything about me from listening to this podcast, you know that I have a lot of kids. I've got 4 kids, and 3 of my children are beautiful little girls. And as fathers, when it comes to our sons and our daughters, I think instinctively, we just assume that our sons are the ones who really need us. We need to be there for our daughters. We need to protect our daughters, but mom is going to take care of everything else. But I want to help you understand today that our daughters need us, that we are critically important to our daughters. So joining me on the podcast today is Dr. Meg Meeker, and she's going to give us some beautiful insight as to what our daughters need from us, the impact that we can make, and how we can be the dads that our daughters need us to be. I want to break in real quick and let you know how much I appreciate you listening to the podcast. My prayer is that I can be a help and a blessing to you on your fatherhood journey. So if you're not already subscribed to the podcast, go ahead and subscribe. And if at any point you have questions, please feel free to reach out to me via email at fatheringourfuture@gmail.com. And if you want other good content, you can go to the website, check out the blog, and other free resources. Thank you again for listening. Be blessed. Do you remember when you became a dad and all of a sudden those New Balances just hit differently? There's something about fatherhood that impacts your wardrobe, and I'm happy to share that I can help you with that now. Fathering Our Future now has merch. We have sweatshirts and hats and other pieces of clothing that you will enjoy sporting as a father. Just go to fatheringourfuture.com, select merch, or click the link in the description of this episode and get you something that you will enjoy and be proud to wear as a dad. Dad, I want you to know I care about you and I am on your side. So I have a free gift for you. I've put together a 7-day devotional, extracted from my devotional, Following Our Father, to help you realign your identity as a dad, to be the dad that God has called you to be and that your children need you to be. Simply click the link in the description below and get your free 7-day devotional. Well, Dr. Meeker, it is such a privilege to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being with me today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I'm very much looking forward to our conversation. You have done so much good and contributed so much wisdom on the topic of parenting with a great emphasis on fatherhood. We're going to focus on the father-daughter relationship, and you have done a tremendous amount of work there. I'm looking forward to this conversation, but I felt like it would be a mistake if I didn't give you the opportunity to contribute something on the relationship between fathers and their sons. I feel like, having a son myself, this is a relationship that is easy to take for granted because we're both males. It's easier, in a sense, to relate, in my experience, to my son. And because of that, I feel like the easiness could contribute to me missing something that's important. So I want to ask you, what do you think is something that we tend to miss as dads with the relationship that we have with our sons that we should probably pay a little more attention to?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought that up because we have a son as well. And I deal with a lot of teenage sons, of course. And the number one thing that a father needs to do to make sure that his son grows up into a good man is to make sure that his son knows that he approves of him and that he gives his son his blessing. Because if a son grows into manhood and never has that sense that I was good enough for my dad, not only good enough, but I was great because I was his son, then he will spend the rest of his life trying to find his value and his worth through many other places. But what he really longs for is to know that my dad looked at me and saw me and approves of the man that I am. And then he's ready to launch into almost any venture with great success.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I have heard countless people, men, talk about how they just wanted to hear their fathers say that I'm proud of you. And that's something that they chase. They desperately want our approval. And I do think that's smart for us as fathers to keep top of mind with our sons. I do want to switch the conversation. Maybe we can have another conversation at another point where we focus on the father-son relationship. But I want to focus on the father-daughter relationship because I have 3 little girls myself. And I want to make sure that I do right by them. But I do want to ask this first before we get into the details and the true benefits that you're going to talk about when it comes to the relationship that dads have with their daughters. I want to ask you, why did you focus on this so much? And maybe I pry a little bit here potentially, but is this something that was personal for you because of the relationship that you had with your father? Or is this something that after conducting so much research, you felt, I absolutely just have to talk about this?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. It started from my personal experience with my father, and then seeing my husband as we were raising my husband's interaction with our daughters as we were raising them. And I saw a lot of similarities in them. And I was very grateful. But then I was working in my practice as a pediatrician, and I was seeing a lot of the girls who came into my practice who were struggling with something did much better in overcoming the struggles or even preventing the struggles from occurring who had dads who were involved and engaged. I'm not talking about a dad who has a PhD in psychology, just a dad who showed up, a dad that was there, a dad who, hugged her and, so showed some admiration. And as I was seeing these girls doing very well in my practice behind closed doors who had, decent fathers or engaged fathers. And then I was seeing what was going on in our culture was this beginning of sort of stripping dads of their masculine identity and making fun of them and, presenting them in media and in the public as dumb and, you couldn't even find a decent Father's Day card. You turn on the television and watch a movie and you got, Adam Sandler as the quintessential great dad who might not even be involved in his dad life. So as I saw the critical importance of dads involved in their daughters' lives in reality, and then I saw dads being bashed in movies and everywhere else in our culture, I thought, wait a minute. Somebody needs to say something that this is really hurting our dads, what the messages that they're getting from, the culture and who they really are. And somebody needs to say something. And so I waited and I waited. And as God usually does, I said, somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to say something. And then I get a little tap on the shoulder. Okay, we'll go do it. And so then I did some research on how critically important fathers are in their daughters' lives and even just their children's lives. And what I found was pretty startling, that the research on mothers and their kids is abundant. Research on fathers' influence in their kids was much less. And I thought that was very telling. The research on dads didn't really need to be done because dads weren't that important anyway. And I was very upset about this because this totally went contrary to what I was seeing in my practice. And so that's when I decided, okay, here's what I'm going to do. Rather than write a book and say, dads, you need to this and you need to this, you need to this, I'm going to write a book. Two things I want to do. I want to show a dad who he is through his daughter's eyes. Because the way a father looks at himself is very much, this is what I need to do to be successful. I need to spend X amount of time with her. I need to have a good job. When should I give her a cell phone? When should I not? And all these mechanical things. That's not really what a daughter wants from her dad. So I wanted to present to fathers who they were through their daughter's eyes. I also wanted to write a book where I did not criticize a dad anywhere in the pages. Because dads are so used to picking up anything about fatherhood. And first, what they hear is all the things that dads do wrong. They're absent all the time, that they run out on their kids, that they're a deadbeat dad, whatever. And then this is how you learn to be a good dad. I said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to show pictures of what fathers do well so that they're an example. And I'm just going to do those two things. And it just sparked. And I think it really resonated with dads because it showed them A, who they truly are, B, who they were meant to be, what the greatest joys in their lives are, which is the relationships with, family and God, and in particular their daughters. And then just live that out and don't worry about the mechanics. Just understand who you are and walk into those roles and don't worry about it. All the other stuff will work itself out.
You brought up identity, and I think that's one of the biggest things that plagues fathers today. And I focus on this quite extensively on this podcast.
Yes.
One of the biggest things that I think helps fathers is when they realize that being a dad is not what I do, but it's who I am. Having that shift in identity, that I'm no longer just me, that I'm not just this solo guy. I'm not even simply just a husband, but now I'm also a father. And it's not something that I'm just doing, but it's at the core of who I now am. It's so important for us to remember when it comes to fatherhood. Identity is absolutely key. Now, you said something that I completely agree with, and that is that daughters just need their dads. We are important to our daughters. But I wonder if you could help us by breaking that down a little bit further. Could you maybe give us some reasons as to why dads are so important for their daughters?
Oh my. Your relationship, a father's relationship with his daughter, you are the first introduction to male love and male trust and male security and male protection. And in those first months of a daughter's life, um, she knows that you're not mom. Your voice is different. You feel different when you pick her up. You walk differently. You're stronger. And so a daughter forms this sense of maleness from the get-go. And if she learns that that maleness is good and it's filled with love and she can trust that, that gets incorporated into her her being, and she incorporates that into her identity as far as from now on, I know that a male is good. So you really set a template for how she's going to experience men for the rest of her life. Now that's good or it's bad. So if dad isn't there, she never learns to really get that. She can be taught it when she's older, but it's very different. That father attachment in those first months and years of life is critical because that shapes her identity as much as mother attachment. And that's where many of us in the medical field have gotten it wrong. We're so focused on mother attachment to our children. You need to breastfeed because it's liquid gold. And if you don't give your child liquid gold, they're not going to have a good IQ. It's wait. They need father touch and interaction as well. So right from the very beginning, you shape her perception of maleness and men and how she can relate to men. And that's critically important. Also, a father shapes a daughter's identity in different ways than the mother does. Now, maybe you'll resonate with this as a son. I do as a daughter. Maybe other listeners will. When you're growing up and you have a mom and dad at home and your mom says to you, "Oh, you can get an A on that test. I know you can. You just keep trying and reading. You can do it. You can do it." And then your dad comes along and says, "You can get an A on that test." Who are you going to believe? You believe your father, not because he's, smart or anything else, but because in your eyes, he doesn't need to say anything. In your eyes, your mom has to tell you you're great, right? Because if your mom doesn't tell you you're great, you might as well hang it up, But when your father speaks to you, it means something different to a son or a daughter than when your mother does. And it's not better. It's not worse. It just carries an authority that your mom doesn't necessarily carry. Now, women hate this. Now, I'm going to say mothers are just as important, of course, but we bring something very different to the table in shaping our child's identity, particularly when it comes to shaping our daughter's identity. And a daughter looks to her father as the ultimate authority on everything, even if he is not, even if he isn't a really good guy, because we need that. We want that. We want our dads to be the ones who protect us, to show us we're worth something. We want our dads to affirm us because we want to know that we can. And when our mothers protect us, we think, well, I hope it works. I'm half the size of my husband. So, I just gave it up. And I always knew when I told my daughter something, they were, yeah, mom, yeah, mom, yeah, mom. But when my husband would come in and say something, it's like all of a sudden they believe it. And I go, wait, what is happening here? And, the response is just very different. So I shape their identity in a very different way. And you know what? It's okay. It's good because I bring something very different. So the shaping of a daughter's identity via her father's interaction is critical because it shapes a different part of her identity. She gains a different sense of her own authority and her own skill level and her own ability to succeed in many different things. So, on many different levels, dad influences a daughter very differently than her mother does.
Something that you brought up that I think is fascinating is that we have influence in our children's lives in the first few months. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's remarkable. And it makes me think of some of the comments that I've heard from other people that our role is not really that essential that early on, which I think is just absolutely crazy. While I might not be able to explain it like you, I just wholeheartedly believe that from the very beginning of our children's lives, we play a significant role.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the influence component that you brought up, I think, is something that all of us need to remember, especially if we have those young babies that they need us. Even our young daughters, they absolutely need us. So while it's always been, I guess, my word against theirs, because I probably cannot speak of this as eloquently as you can, I'm just going to go ahead and just make sure that you're absolutely emphatic that our kids need us, even when they're young. They absolutely need us there for the younger years.
Those people, medical experts, psychologists, psychiatrists, so whoever they are, who say that they're not going to remember those first few months are wrong, dead wrong. And here's how we know that: because the attachment to a parent is subconscious. It's something that a human being has a need for from the get-go. They have a need to be able to know that they're cared for and taken care of. They have a need to trust that when they cry, someone will feed them. And we know through so much research now that if those fundamental needs aren't met in those first few months of life and they can't attach properly as an infant, that they're going to have trouble for the rest of their lives. And Erica Komisar wrote a brilliant book called Prioritizing Motherhood in the First 3 Years of Life. Now they're talking about mothers, but talks about this whole attachment issue. And it's just as important for a dad to attach to his daughter as a mother to attach, because these are such deep-seated, subconscious needs that are there that if they are not met, they will sort of keep the foundation of that child's life fractured for years. And it can take years for kids to overcome. I have a patient in my practice who came to me when he was 3. And just to sort of, show you this, he was 3. And for the majority of his 3 years, he was locked in a closet because his parents just were very, very ill, mentally ill. And his younger brother was strapped in a car seat until 6 months of his life. Now, the 3-year-old came to me and couldn't talk. The 6-month-old came and was developmentally about the level of a 2-month-old. Now, somebody may say, well, these kids aren't going to remember being strapped in a car seat, remember being locked in a closet. Oh, yes, they will. Because, those first months of life, what happens to them physically and mentally has a profound effect on their physical and their emotional development. And, so that's why, those people are just wrong. I so strongly believe in father attachment that I encourage mothers, against the advice of many who are breastfeeding experts, to have mothers right from the get-go pump milk and give dad a bottle to feed the bottle to the baby so that dad can begin his attachment. That's very contrary to what a lot of other pediatricians and breastfeeding experts will tell you. But that's how critically important the father bond is from what I see in my research.
It's not that they'll remember every little detail of what happened when they were 2 years old, but the way that they felt when they were 2. These are the things that will continue on. I think this is smart for us as dads to hold on to and to remember.
Yes. And it's never too late. I say these things and there may be some dads out there who say, "Oh gosh, I was in the military. I didn't see my child until he was 1," or, my wife left me and I didn't see my child till he was 2. You can make up for it. Now, in the case of the 2 children I just talked about, that's a tough one because they have been so deeply damaged in their psyche that if they can overcome that, it's going to take years and years and years. But if your child hasn't been damaged like that, but you haven't been around, but he's been with mom, that child so desperately wants to know you and be loved by you and trust you and attach to you that it will happen. And you have to have confidence that it'll happen because a lot of dads are told, nope, too late. You've never communicated well with your daughter. Now she's 14 and she's going to be out of the house. And they feed you these lies that she doesn't need you. And that's so wrong. I always tell dads, every woman takes one man to her grave and it's her father because she either wants more time with him or she wants more healing with him. But it always lasts until her last breath, that need for dad connection.
I think this rings true across the spectrum. I mean, even if you look at orphans, they grow up and they just want to know who are my parents. They're always looking for that connection with us. And I think that this is something key for us to remember. Hey, if you're a new dad or choosing to embark on a fresh start as a father, I have a gift for you. I wrote a book a while back called Cut the Crap, Direct Tips for Becoming a Dad. I don't teach you how to change a diaper. That one's totally on you. But I do talk about 5 elements that you need to focus on as a dad if you want to be the dad your children need you to be. And this is completely free. It is yours. There's no strings attached. The only thing that I'd like you to consider is if the book brings value to you as a father, make a contribution by going to fatheringourfuture.com/support. But you don't have to. Again, it is a free gift from me to you. The link is in the description after the end of the episode. Click it, get your copy, and I pray that it helps you. Everyone has an opinion on fatherhood, but there's only one place that we should actually look, and that's to God, our Father. That's why I wrote Following Our Father, a devotional for dads. In this, I cover 30 qualities and attributes of our Father in heaven that help us better understand our identity as dads. Each devotional is followed up with a daily step so that we can take the principles of our Father and immediately apply them to our own lives. This is a tool and a resource in your hands that will bless you. Click the link in the description and get yourself a copy of Following Our Father today. Now, you mentioned something that I want to go ahead and skip ahead in the questions that I have for you and jump to this one. I was watching a clip of The Diary of a CEO, and Dr. Sarah Hill is being interviewed, and she shared research that girls who do not have a father who is present and involved in the home, that they tend to mature more quickly. They start their period sooner. Their body begins to mature at a faster rate than girls who do have a father who's involved in the home. Now, I heard this and I thought, this is kind of fascinating. And I didn't know why this was the case. I didn't know if this is something that is part of the creative work of God, to where if a daughter has this void of this male connection from her father, that maybe her body says, well, we need it, so we're going to go ahead and just speed things up so that we can find a companion and fill this void. Now, I'm not going to make a doctrine out of that, but I did think that that was remarkable. So I just wanted to ask you, how should we interpret research like this? First of all, if it's true, but then how do we actually think of this?
Well, she's absolutely right. And I find that a fascinating fact. And it is true. If dad is in the home and, married couple, dad is in the home, the girl will start, her period later in life. And if dad is not, then the girl will mature more quickly from a sexual standpoint. And I think that it's because of some sort of unconscious stress. It's almost like when you have babies that are being born and premature and they're going to be born prematurely, what we do is we give them medication to stress them. We give them steroids so that their bodies go, okay, I better get ready because this is going to happen. And it works. And I think it's very similar to that there's a mechanism inside of a girl. I don't know. God must have put it there, or I don't know. But there's a mechanism, it seems to me, in a girl when she realizes there's stress around and that her body needs to prepare itself for dangers out there quickly. That I don't know, that she needs to be ready or something. But a girl with her father in the picture just tends to grow up with a much more normal endocrine rhythm, if you will, that everything is on target. It's as it should be physiologically in her life, because spiritually things are as they should be. Emotionally, things are as they should be. But when they're not as they should be and stress enters a girl's life, she develops more quickly, and that's not good for her.
I just remember coming across this clip and hearing that research and just being amazed and baffled to the point that's been made already in this episode. Fathers are so important, even and especially to their daughters. Now, since I brought up this research question, I do want to ask you this, because you do extensive research on fathers and families. I want to know from you, is there research out there that you feel dads absolutely need to be aware of?
Yes. Oh, sure. I think that what dads need to, and I'm so glad that you brought up that dads need to know it, because sometimes dads hear this and intellectually they know, okay, yeah, you tell me I'm important to my daughter. But that message is so contradicted over and counter. What's the word I'm looking for? Is so contradicted in the rest of his day. He hears messages, no, you're not, and oftentimes many women, strong-headed women and wives will communicate, even with their body language, that dad just isn't that important. Just sort of stay in orbit. I got this. Thanks. Which the mother would communicate, particularly when it comes to daughters. We know how to talk to them, so on and so forth. So to even try to convince a dad that he's that important has been a real challenge for me, even though I have all the research behind me. But I think that one of the things dads absolutely 100% need to know is that when dad, again, is just engaged and just around for more than 15 minutes a day, just, eating dinner and around and talking with people, girls, and I think this is probably true for boys as well, but I'll just talk about for girls. Girls are far more likely to graduate from high school, more likely to go on to college and graduate schools, less likely to struggle with depression and anxiety, less likely to get involved in sex, drugs, and alcohol when they're young. That's just the beginning. And that's just a father being a decent guy in the home with his family and letting everybody know, I'm here because I love being here and I love you and I want to watch out for you. And that's it. So the power of a dad across all spectrums of a daughter's life is enormous. And it's hard to say, well, it's, it's more important here and it's more important here. It's important on all levels of a daughter's life. And I think that just can't be overstressed or overemphasized, because still, even through this show, you'll have dads listen and go, yeah, but don't say, but yeah, yeah, but you don't know me and you don't know the mistakes I've made. And I would say, yes, I do, because I've talked to your kids. I've talked to thousands of daughters, and their needs are all very similar. And what a good dad brings to all those girls is pretty much the same. It's very simple. It's very basic. They just don't understand the power it has in their daughters' lives because they've been duped by other people.
All right. So I'd like to make this as plain as possible for myself and for the other fathers listening. Can we track through the different phases of our daughters' lives, babies, toddlers, preteens, teens, young adults, adults? And can we focus on the primary things that we as fathers need to be intentional about in order to have a
Mhm.
healthy relationship with our daughters?
Well, again, that's the attachment. And I think a lot of the attachment in those early years literally comes from touch and holding and contact and rocking the baby and being available for the baby, that mom's not the sole source of nutrition, if you will, but you're there too. But I think in those early years it's all about attachment and just, touching and holding the baby, singing to the baby, praying for the baby, whatever. And that's during the toddler years, that's the most important thing.
Okay. So when we enter the preteen phase, does it stay the same? I had a conversation with Dr. John Deloney, and he brought up the example of a man hugging his daughter and feeling the bra strap in the back and then freaking out like, oh, I need to keep my distance because
Oh,
now this
yeah.
is weird. So
Yeah. Yeah.
how do things work as our daughters mature?
Yeah. I'm so glad you brought that up because puberty freaks dads out. And often what freaks them out is they have this little girl, if they have a good relationship, she'll sit in his lap and they'll talk and he'll sit next to her and they're watching a movie. And then one day she walks downstairs and she stares at you and you go to give her a hug and she's like, get away from me, you creepy person. And he goes, okay, I'll see you later. And because dads are so thrown off, what do I do now? But what I would say to a dad is whenever your daughter rejects you, she's not rejecting you, she's rejecting herself. And what she's saying is, Dad, I feel so uncomfortable. I'm so ugly. You don't really want to touch me. Nobody wants to touch me. And so don't take her personally. So when she rebuffs you and she pushes you away, again, this isn't about you. You're the same guy. This is all about her trying to figure out if she's okay or not. Because remember, in those puberty years, those pubertal years, every child, whether it's a girl or boy, feels that everybody in every room they ever walk into is staring at them and notice everything that's wrong with their physique. They're too tall, they're too thin, they're too fat, they're too short, they have too much acne, they don't, no matter what, they cannot win. And so that's what she's really saying to you. So to that father, I would say, back away gently, but pursue her. Pursue her in a different way. Good guys, when they're confronted by their wife or their daughter, go, okay, I'm not going to fight with you. I'm just going to back off. And that's not what you want to do. You don't want to fight with her, but you gently move in. So instead of hugging her in the morning or before she goes to school, she still needs that attention. And she still needs the warmth and the affection. She needs to know that you want to give it to her. She just wants it in a very different way. And she wants to know that she's okay in your eyes still. She's lovely. You still want her. You still want to be with her. And the way she gets those messages is through physical touch, affection's critically important. So rather than, walking in the house at the end of a day and she runs up to you, give her a big bear hug, you walk by her, you touch her on the shoulder, maybe give her a kiss on the top of the head and move on. Because what you've said to her is, I see you and I love you and I approve. You're just great in my eyes. Another thing to do with girls. So during those pre-pubertal years, she still needs affection from you. You just need to be a little more clever about how and when you give it. It can be short. It can be quick, but you need to do it. You need to give her attention. You need to pay attention to her when she walks in the room or when you walk home from work and she's sitting there at kitchen table or whatever. Put your stupid phone down. Don't be texting somebody. Look at her. Say, hello. It's so great to see you. I haven't seen you in hours and hours and hours. If you walk by her texting a friend, you're basically saying to her, you're invisible. What I'm doing now is far more important than recognizing you. And as a far, a way to kill two birds with one stone, if you want, give her affection and give her attention. When she's going to bed, it's a great time to go up to her, sit in her room, sit on a chair. She's in bed, she's reading, she's whatever. You know what? I haven't talked to you all day. How was your day? Oh, dad, da, da, da. then you keep coming night after night, and eventually she'll tell you how her day was. And even in 5 minutes, 10 minutes of that touchdown, give her that one-on-one attention. Maybe you touch her feet, maybe you kiss her on the top of the head. It communicates to her the exact same thing as the attachment communicated to her when she was a toddler. You're still amazing in my eyes. I still adore you, and I want to be with you. Period. That's it. You don't have to worry about, what classes she should take next year or anything like that. Those are the things that really matter to a daughter, that attention, the affection, and then affirming her. And you don't have to affirm the stuff she does. Don't clap for her all the time. Don't even show up at every soccer game. Affirm her as having value because she is your daughter. Period. God gave her to you, and you revere that and respect that so much. It's so precious to you that you were given to her and her to you. If she grows up knowing that and that's valuable, you don't have to worry about anything else. See how simple it is? But the simplest things are the hardest things to do. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and strength and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. Good, great, got those two down. I don't think so. It's the simple, most profound things that are hardest to do. But these are the simple and the profound things that every girl needs from her dad, and any dad can deliver. Any dad can deliver. Just keep it simple.
Yeah, that's great advice. Affirming the accomplishment itself can have a negative impact, even though we can be genuine in our affirmation and we're trying to say something nice. The message that gets communicated often is, well, you're great because of what you have done, not necessarily because of who you are. And so we as fathers and even moms, we have to be very intentional in the language that we use. And so maybe when we affirm our kids for something that they do, we affirm the behaviors and the characteristics that were behind the scene that actually made the accomplishment possible. So we can praise their discipline. We can praise their organization. We can praise the fact that they were proactive and that they didn't procrastinate or anything like that. I think that's very smart for us to do. Now, we've talked about all the different phases up to this point. I'm curious, our girls, they grow up, what role does the father have at that point?
So every girl wants to go back to whatever is familiar. And that's why you are always her father's always in her mind and, of course, in her heart. And when she goes out with a boy and that boy is doing something, saying something, acting in a way that is not familiar to her because her father never did it, and you are the plumb line, she won't stick around with that guy, won't stick around very long with her because she'll be done with him. And so even though a father may think, oh, my daughter's 15 or 17 or 20 and she's distant from me, she doesn't often want to talk to me, make no mistake, you are in her mind, and you still are, if you're a good dad, the gold standard for how men should behave. But the opposite is also true. If you have had an abusive relationship with your daughter, you scream at her all the time, you swear at her all the time, you tell her she's not worth anything, guess who she's going to marry? A guy who does all of that. And I can't tell you the number of times I've had a girl in my practice who was 18 and said, I just can't wait to get out of the house. I'll never be around a man like that. I'm so tired of my dad putting me down and screaming at me. And 4 or 5 years later, guess who she's marrying? A guy who does exactly that, because that's what's familiar to her. And that's a very powerful thing. Over there, you are the familiar and you are the standard set for her. In my book, The Strong Father, Strong Daughter, I have a whole chapter which must make men's, the hairs on the back of their necks stand up. It's called Be the Man You Want Her to Marry. Because one day you're going to be looking at the guy at the end up at the altar, and you're walking in the back of the church, and hopefully, if it's good, you'll see a reflection of yourself in that man. And that's a pretty cool thing.
I'm just fascinated learning how much influence we have as dads in our daughters' lives. This conversation has been eye-opening because I think oftentimes as dads, we just think that our girls are going to grow up to be just like their mom. And we think that we have next to nothing to do with that. But after this conversation, I am quickly realizing that we have a lot more influence and power in the formation of our daughters than I think most of us likely realize. Who they choose to marry, how they choose to conduct themselves, how they even view and think of themselves. We have a tremendous influence in that. Now, I wanted to ask you the big things that we should focus on with our daughters and the best things that we could do for them. And so much has already been discussed on this. I have jotted down a few things, and I just want to see if there's anything else to throw into the mix here. But it looks like we should focus on attention,
Mm-hmm.
affection, and affirmation.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else?
I think acceptance. I would sort of, I think acceptance. And when you think about the person of Christ, isn't that what we want from him? If he were here and alive, wouldn't you want him to hug you? Wouldn't you want him to stare into your face? Wouldn't you want him to say, I see everything about you and I adore you? And I believe that you can do all things through me. Isn't that what those four are? And that's what a dad gives his daughter is what Christ gives us, is what you give your daughter. And I would say, mothers can give those things, but they mean different things to their kids. And again, I'm speaking truth, and a lot of people don't like to hear the truth, but that's truth. And that's the way kids see their dads.
I think that's a very powerful addition. And for the fathers out there listening, you have no excuse because now we have alliteration on our side. So this should be very easy to remember these 4 A's: affection, attention, affirmation, and acceptance. Just remember that, especially with your daughters, and I think you'll be okay. Dr. Meeker, before we wrap this up, I know we've talked about a ton with the father-daughter relationship, but I do want to give you the opportunity in a general sense. It could be something that's been discussed, or it can just be off the cuff. This is what you feel with your experience and all that you've done in the work regarding the family and fathers. What is your best piece of advice for dads?
I know it sounds cliche, but be present, show up, be in the house. Look at your daughter, recognize that she's doing something, that she's there, and that you're seeing what she's doing. Because again, I think a lot of times parents and kids are in the same room, but they're really not present because, a whole different conversation. Kids can live in their own little world. And that's why screens are so bad, because they cut them off from everything. But the same can be true for a dad. Screens can cut a dad off. You can be sitting there, in the same room with your daughter or your son, and you're texting and you're reading and you're looking at your computer. You're not with anybody. And I think that's very painful for kids. So physically be present and mentally be present as well. And once you start to do that, everything else will fall in place, because we're made for relationship. But if we don't start in those two spots, you really can't have a relationship. You need to be, present physically. And then you need to be focusing on the person, then everything else will follow.
I really like how you phrased that. Just so precise. Be present and show up. This is something that needs to almost be a mantra for fathers. Be present and show up. And I also appreciate the addition about being on our phones. This is something that culturally I know that we're not doing great at. But even if it's in a more noble way, I mean, I've caught myself, not always, sometimes I'm guilty of the brain rot too, but I've caught myself being on my phone reading the Bible, but my kids are around. But my kids don't know that I'm reading the Bible. The kids just see that I'm on my phone and I'm not focused on them. And I think this is something that we need to be mindful of as fathers, their perspective of us. I think this is probably why the Bible encourages us to abstain from all appearance of evil. Our kids don't know that we're doing something good. Maybe we need to communicate, hey, just give me a few minutes. I've got to read this, or I need to take this call, or I need to check this email. I will be right back to you. But we need to probably make it a practice to not be on our phones, our devices, when our kids are present. This has been such a fantastic conversation. You've blessed me, and I know you've blessed all those who have listened. I want to give people an opportunity to learn more about you, but before we do that, would you mind closing us out with a word of prayer?
Oh, I'd love it. Sure, you bet. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you for this time. We just pray that once this goes to production, that all the glitches will be fixed and that people will not be distracted by distractions. And I just pray because we want this to be honoring and glorifying to you, Lord Jesus. I just pray that everybody who listens to the podcast would understand how critically important the father in their children's life is, or the father is to his kids' lives, and that the fathers everywhere are critically important, as you, our Heavenly Father, are so critically important to us. Thank you for our time, and thank you for blessing us with this fellowship and time together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. So, Dr. Meeker, if people want to learn more about you, the resources that you have available, and the work that you're doing, where do they find you?
Meekerparenting.com is my website, and I'm starting a really fun community where I'm going to, it's a subscription cheap, where I'm going to answer questions from people, and I'm going to do webinars, and there's all sorts of, courses and stuff like that they can have, they can get access to. So meekerparenting.com.
Awesome. So go to meekerparenting.com if you want to learn more about Dr. Meg Meeker, take advantage of the resources that are available, and potentially be a part of the community that she is starting. Dr. Meeker, thank you again for being with me. This has been such a treat. And even though there were glitches, you brought them up in the prayer.
No, you don't need to put that in there. But, sometimes you think, okay, we know who's trying to wreck our interview, but we're just not going to put up with it. So repair the glitches.
Well, in my opinion, this was a whole lot of fun. And I'm just really glad that we got to do this.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
Well, I'm so happy that I got to have that conversation with Dr. Meg Meeker. And yes, there were some glitches along the way. It was a bit painful and frustrating. The software that I use to conduct these remote interviews is usually completely reliable until today. So that makes me wonder if maybe there's something that doesn't want you to hear this conversation. Now, I'm glad to report that I was able to edit everything despite the glitches so that you were able to get the full scope of this conversation. But I want to just reinforce this. You are important to your daughters. Dads, your daughter or daughters, they need you. You have incredible influence in their lives. And I want you to walk away from this podcast knowing that that is the case. I want you to remember this use of alliteration that was brought up at the end of our conversation. These are the things that your daughters need from you. If you want to be the dad that your daughters need you to be, remember what they need from you. They need your attention. They need your affection. They need affirmation. And they need acceptance. Remember those things and be intentional about implementing each of those every single day with your girls. And you will be the dad that your daughters need you to be. Thank you so much for being with me. This is Fathering Our Future. I'm Anthony Vandegrift, and I hope you'll join me next time. Hey, one more time, I want to thank you for listening to Fathering Our Future. If you're not subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever you listen and consider leaving a nice review because I would appreciate that. But if you're not connected to Fathering Our Future on social media, you can find it on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, and there you're going to get some additional content on a more regular basis that you don't always get here on the podcast. Now, the last thing that I would like to ask of you is that you would consider becoming a financial partner of Fathering Our Future, because dads make a difference, and dads are not disposable. Dads are vital, and they are essential, and they are needed. And the impact that dads make doesn't just reside in the home, but it has a ripple effect that goes to churches and communities and culture. And I'm inviting you to be a part of equipping and empowering and educating dads to be the dad that God has called them to be and that their children need them to be. You can become a financial partner with Fathering Our Future. It can be a one-time contribution, a monthly commitment, but by doing that, you play a direct role in impacting dads. You can check the link in the description below. You can pray about it. You can get on board. And I thank you in advance for becoming a part of Fathering Our Future. in a special and a dynamic way. God bless you.